Hey everyone, guess what? I got a webcam, and I can use this webcam to post video blogs, Skype with friends if any of my long distance friends want to Skype with me, and who knows what else. What I'm going to do today is present this idea related to my favorite time of the year, which is Advent, which starts today. Advent is the season of time on the Christian calendar that leads up to Christmas. It's mostly the month of December that it takes place, and it's a time for remembering and celebrating the events leading up to the birth of Christ. And every Sunday, I think I'm going to try to post something here inspired by Advent. So today's presentation is called Hope and the Temple. And I'm going to present it in the form of pictures, very simple pictures. I'm not an artist, but very simple pictures drawn on paper napkin towels. I like to use the phrase paper napkin towels because I'm never quite sure when to use paper towels and when to use napkins, so I just say all three words. Alright, so the idea here is that this is very simplified, almost oversimplified, to the point where the bare essence of the idea, the main point, is made very, very clear, even though some of the details may be lost. So I hope you like it. There was a time when God was about 6,000 years younger than he is now, when he started to try to connect with humanity in new ways. And he did that through a person named Abram, who he renamed Abraham. And God spoke to Abraham. Abraham was the one God had chosen to be the father of a new nation that God was forming that came to be known as Israel. And at first, Israel were nomads. They lived in tents, just like any good nomads did. And they moved from place to place and never stayed in one place for very long, and carried their tents with them and all their possessions wherever they went. And the way that people met and connected with God was through the only way that they had to do that, which was a tent that they called the tent of meeting. So there was one tent designated as the place where people would meet with God to worship and to hear from him. But there was this idea that we're going to come back to later, that God could not be contained in a tent. And so when he really wanted to get some serious business done, he talked to a guy named Moses, and he met with Moses on a mountain called Sinai. And it was the real deal, and there was smoke and lightning and fire and thunder and all that scary stuff. Well, eventually the Israelites got tired of moving around all the time, and just as God had promised, they settled in a land that they called, guess what, Israel. And a guy named King David established a city named Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And in Jerusalem, the Israelites decided to build God a temple. He no longer had to live in a tent. God would now have a permanent dwelling place, and all the people were very happy and worshiped God there and met with him there. And the temple became the ultimate symbol of God's presence among the Israelites, the place where heaven met earth, the place where God met with people. Both the tent and the temple were different symbols of the same thing, God being with people, God with us. Now, something really interesting happened in that a prophet among the Israelites by the name of Isaiah prophesied that there would be a person born one day, and that person would be called Emmanuel, God with us. Just like the idea of the temple, except now it's a person. And Christians believe that that person was Jesus, the one born in a manger, surrounded by shepherds and angels, worshipped by wise men, tended to by his mother and father, Mary and Joseph. And everything that God was and is, looking back even on Sinai and all that thunder and smoke and lightning, became embodied, first in a zygote, then in a fetus, and then in a small child, with feet no bigger than your pinky. Just as the tent and the temple were symbols of God being with us, of God's presence among humanity, of heaven meeting earth, Jesus became the reality. Jesus, very literally, in reality, is God with us, God in human form. And so when we look back, as we celebrate Advent, and we remember the scene of Jesus, born in a manger, surrounded by the shepherds and angels and his mother and father, one of the main things that we think of is hope. That in Jesus, hope has begun, is continuing, and will be as God with us. That God's reign on earth has begun, is continuing, and one day in a final way will be. That there will be no more suffering, no more wars, no more mourning, no more death. That hope and peace and justice and love will reign on earth as it does now in heaven. And that is part of the meaning of Advent and the birth of Christ. Happy Advent.